Snap judgments can't exist without injury updates on Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. So let's get right to it. Ohio State came out of the game in better shape than they went in. And that means...
No questions on Wednesday? I don't know. Ryan Day said he expects a full week of work from Carnell and Jeremiah. The way I see it is this. If your leg is feeling good enough to jump into the crowd after a win, your leg is good enough to play the next week. I don't see any other universe for that scenario. If you're good enough to jump into the crowd, you're good enough to play. So we should expect a week full of not questions about Jeremiah and Carnell until Saturday afternoon when we get them and they're questionable on the availability report, which I think is fine. Everyone should be questionable all the time.
We all are. We're all day to day. Welcome to Snap Judgments. He is Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us on 97.1 The Fan, 10 TV's YouTube, 10 TV Plus, anywhere you get podcasts. I thought we might get through the entire Ryan Day Tuesday press conference in here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center without an injury update on Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, because my assumption was the way that they played in that game, having another week to prepare. If you need to scale back the practice reps, so be it. But it wasn't like, this is it. Let's take a big gamble on their health and hope that they can go. They got a thumbs up to go play, and they're going to get a thumbs up on Saturday night. Now, the notion was, should Ohio State try and squeeze out some extra rest for these guys? Is the playoff more important? If you're guaranteed a bye, does it matter what happens on Saturday night? And I'm here to tell you, this started on Saturday and it continued on Tuesday. The Buckeyes very much want to win in Lucas Oil Stadium on Saturday against Indiana.
Oh, you play to win the game, right?
Oh, you do?
A famous coach once said that. Like, you play to win the game. So if you're going to Indianapolis, you may as well try to beat Indiana. And there was more conversation about the Hoosiers today than maybe any press conference we've had about an opponent this season, maybe even more so than Michigan last week. Talking about just the actual matchup itself, because last week it's all about the mentals and all about the emotion. Yeah. This is actually about the football team. And Ryan Day was exceedingly praising the Indiana offense, Kurt Signetti, their defense, the entire program. And Indiana clearly has Ohio State's attention. And I think it's an interesting dichotomy, because there was so much conversation a week ago about how the Buckeyes can't worry about what happened last year against Michigan, right? Can't worry. And on the same token, the flip side of that, you can't worry about what happened against Indiana last year. It's not the same Indiana team. So I think it's two sides of the same coin, but it is interesting. It will be interesting to me to see the response from this team. How quickly do you put last year's Indiana game in a game that they were clearly outmatched from the start? And Indiana players admitted as much, that they were probably too much of an underdog last year and took on too much of that role. Now they're saying that, hey, now it's a fight of... it's a battle between monsters or whatever. Like, I don't know that Indiana's a monster, but I think Ohio State has certainly circled this and said, hey, this team's actually pretty good.
Well, I mean, it's number one versus number two.
Yeah. It's weird. I know it's weird to say, like, well, number two in the country might be pretty good. So, but
it doesn't feel like we should have to make that point. And, I know that you don't believe 1 through 85 that this is a true talent equated matchup fully across the board, which maybe would play into some of that underdog mentality. And I'm sure that Kurt Signetti will be, blowing that up and feeding that to his team on the way up to Saturday night, because they're trying to accomplish something that they've never had the opportunity. They've never earned that before. It goes all the way back to, I think, 1967, that before they just handed you a trophy and you didn't have to go out and play it in a Big Ten championship game, certainly not in Indianapolis. But I know that there's a healthy dose of respect that maybe didn't fully exist last year when Ohio State was mocking Kurt Signetti. Will Howard was doing that on the sideline, and you had the video board people putting that up there with a newspaper and search results. But Ryan Day said it today. He's like, yeah, that was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing a year ago, but yeah, actually Google him. Like, he knows what he's doing, and they're a better version this year. Obviously, they're 12-0 and they're playing in a Big Ten title game on Saturday night than they were a year ago. I don't think they were quite ready for the moment, at least not against a program like Ohio State. And maybe Indiana will never get to a point where 1 through 85, they're the same as the Buckeyes.
But they did something this year that Ohio State didn't do last year and failed to do last year. Go to Oregon and win, and go to Penn State and win. Ohio State only won one of those two. Indiana won it both. I think, 1 through 85, they're not good enough. But there's a long list of teams around the country that can't compete with Ohio State 1 through 85. What Indiana could do at least, I think if you look at the first 22 guys, I think you at least see 7 or 8 or 9 guys that would be in the 2 deep at Ohio State, which most teams in the country can't say that. So they're definitely a good team. I mean, I think that there's players on Indiana's team that might start at Ohio State, including the quarterback. I think that Fernando Mendoza and Julian Sain would be one hell of a roster battle if it happened in Columbus. So, like, this is a really good team, and Ryan Day clearly focused on that, wanting to not really talk at all about the Michigan game and how he's felt since then, except for a very interesting comment.
A little bit.
But it wasn't the words.
Well, in one case it was.
It was the wink at the end.
Okay. Well, there were two things that stand out to me then.
Well, you go ahead. It's because it's a fascinating subplot that certainly doesn't need to be a subplot.
So one is essentially in game and one is out of game. He did not want to talk about the way that anything that was going on in the tunnel, anything that went on the field, barricading the block M. I asked about Davison Igbinosun and whether he got a pass from the celebration, taking the helmet off. He said, yeah, a little bit. And then he went into a deeper answer. And the last thing he said was, well, we wanted to act like men. And I can't quite remember. I think there's something about Michigan men and holier than thou. And it's not what they say. Yeah. But I've never heard Ryan Day say it in those terms. And Saturday was humility, and today it was act like men. And that would, by default, mean that the opponents were acting childish or perhaps like boys.
Perhaps. But it's also a reminder that the rivalry game is wild. And Ryan Day saying that he
was cutting some cords.
Was prepared, that on Friday he was telling his staff, we should be prepared in case communications go down, because he had an inkling that they may, was absolutely shocking to hear him say at the podium at the press conference. And again, I keep saying it all the time, and I wonder if Ryan Day read my story this morning on Letterman Row or not, because I asked him about Julian Sain and just the way he handles things. And the first thing he said was that it's kind of like being a head coach and believing in yourself. And if you're not out there being authentic to who you are, it's not going to work. And that's basically what I wrote this morning. But the saying that, well, I had an inkling that this was going to happen, and then he said, it's crazy how our minds work, and then gave a little wink at the end. That was like, oh boy, here we go. No. And away we go. But no, it's to the victor go the spoils. In this case, the victor that is being hailed are the people that are working in this building. So Ohio State gets to say their side of things.
Yeah, and there's no accidents, right?
No accidents with Ryan Day.
No, we can parse that all we want. He did very much take the high road on Saturday, and I appreciated that. But you should be able to have a little bit of gloating.
It's fine. I think the best part of this entire last 3 days is watching all of the Michigan media, like not the local media, not the guys who work on websites like Letterman Row and stuff like we do, but like those are fan sites, right? So I understand if people who run them are fans. I'm a fan of Ohio State. I don't shy away from it. But watching the Rich Eisens of the world, the Taylor Lewans of the world, Taylor Lewan. It's French. I don't know. Oui, Taylor Lewan. Watching those guys be like, actually, the way that Ohio State handled this win makes the way we handled it look pretty embarrassing. And so, like, that's the gloating. It's actually coming from inside the house, which is the best part. So
inside the big house.
Inside the big house, which is by far the best part. But back to this version of Ohio State's team. CJ Hicks. Ryan Day credited CJ Hicks for the work he did on scout team a week ago, helping Ohio State prepare for Derek Moore and for Jayshon Barham. Now, there's a lot of people who will instantly say, well, CJ's back and the defense is going to get a burst this week. I wouldn't expect him to play a lot this week. We both talked to people in this building last week after practice who said, yeah, he's going to be able to start working with the first and second team defense and finding a role, but he's not been playing football for the last 2 months, and so it's not like he just jumped back in.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not the first team defense. We saw how Ohio State managed the reps in a rivalry game, in a talent equated game, in a matchup game, in a hardware game. We're expanding the repertoire of what we can call it now, and that was almost exclusively Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson. And
well, they played every snap at defensive end.
Yeah, so I don't think that's going to change. Now, does it give Ohio State more depth heading into the postseason? Absolutely, and you'll take that. It's not as if CJ Hicks was working through an injury. It was not like he shut it down to opt out or prepare to transfer. He's been in the weight room. He's been on the practice field. He's been around the team. We've known CJ Hicks for 5-6 years, dating back to his recruitment. And how hard he works and how much time he puts into the process, none of that stopped. But he also has not played a game since September. So the notion that he goes right back in there and could make the kind of play that he did, which feels like a lifetime ago, but he was the one that was draped on Arch Manning's back as that game ended in week 1 for Ohio State. Like, is it going to be the point where he just goes right back in there and becomes the 3rd or 4th defensive end? I don't think that is a realistic outcome. Now, we'll see how this game plays out. If there's opportunities for him to get involved, he is a dynamic athlete. He is physical. He has been working with Larry Johnson and Matt Patricia plenty. But those game reps that he's missing are a pretty significant piece of the puzzle. And you say, well, maybe he's fresh. I know that you can make a case either way, but I think right now Ohio State is viewing this as the game reps are missing, and I don't know how they would replicate that to get him ready to go out there and play the number 2 team in the country, which is what Indiana is. They earned the opportunity to be there. This is not Purdue. This is not UCLA. This is not Rutgers.
No, but it's still valuable. And as you mentioned, it's valuable for depth because Indiana offensively, I'm willing to place a pre-game wager that they will run more offensive plays against Ohio State than anybody in the schedule has this season. Or
did Michigan still only manage 44?
Or right at the top of that list. So you are not going to be able to put Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson out there every single play. You are going to need Zion Grady. You're going to need Bo Atkinson. You're going to need CJ Hicks at some point, whether it's to spell Arvell Reese, whether it's to put Arvell out there with Sonny and use CJ in that spot. There's a lot of things Ohio State can do defensively, and CJ Hicks is a versatile chess piece, but he's also not a chess piece that's been in the game. So you can't really expect him to go out and just become what we think he might be next year if he's on this roster. So.
Yeah, and to tack on to that conversation, Malik Hartford also was designated for that red shirt. They were able to maintain that, but that was also due to injury. So
he's been in a sling for 2 months.
Yeah, I believe that's looking like a season-ending injury for him. So yes, Malik Hartford would be in that same situation where any game played moving forward, Saturday or in the playoff, would not count against the red shirt. But his is an injury situation, so he has missed all of that time and is still currently listed on the availability report. So I would not, you should not plan on seeing Malik Hartford in any form or fashion. But CJ Hicks will be back in uniform against Indiana. So you take that depth where you can get it. We'll see what that looks like.
Yep.
On Saturday.
Anything else that caught your eye or ears?
Those were the main things. I mean, there's
so many judgments to be snapped.
So many,
but
today there was an extensive conversation about Julian Sand because I think everyone is looking ahead to the timing. So Ohio State plays late on Saturday night. And there's going to be, I think, a ton of preview conversations to be had. Maybe we'll have one at some point this week about, is this between Julian Sand and Fernando Mendoza to win the Heisman? Is the winner going to get to celebrate a silver football with his team and then go get a bronze stiff arming statue the next Saturday night in New York? I don't know. We'll see. That's going to be some of the context for this game that's tied up into it. And then the voting will happen immediately afterwards. So there's not, if Julian Sand he's done enough to be, I think, a potential finalist. But I think there's some of this preparation. Well, if he wins, there won't be a lot of time to prepare these stories for him to be a finalist or a potential winner for next week. So you're going to see and hear a lot of that. I think it's probably true. Jeremiah Love, he's not a Heisman winner to me. I think you look at the other options that Diego Pavia or Ty Simpson, I'm not a believer in that. I actually do think that would be accurate to say Saturday night is for the Heisman.
Yeah, obviously this is all kind of moot, irrelevant conversation until Saturday happens anyway, but do you think that the Big Ten, which is stupidly announcing its conference award winners over the next 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, including the conference quarterback of the year and all that stuff, do you think that the Big Ten quarterback of the year is being given a boost to the Heisman vote? But also, how important is it now to the Big Ten and the potential of Big Ten guys winning the Heisman that the West Coast is now Big Ten country instead of because I'm thinking about, I think that neither Julian nor Fernando Mendoza are going to win the Heisman because I think Diego Pavia is going to get all of the Southern vote. And I wonder if the West Coast being Big Ten country now opens up the door for Julian and Fernando to get more of the vote total than they would have in years past because this is now Big Ten country.
But here's the thing. The SEC does not claim Vanderbilt.
No, that's true. They're sort of on their own.
Yeah. So I don't know. That sounds like we'll get.
I've never thought about it, and I don't know why I was thinking about it now. But it's just in the old.
Well, because there was a ton of conversation about what Julian Sayin has done, and if you think back to what Ryan Day said, he was asked who he would vote for amongst the candidates on this team, like he could actually do that. Like, hey, who's your favorite kid? Like, would you like to name them publicly and then deal with that shame for the rest of your life? But if you take some of his comments before, like 6 weeks ago, Ryan Day's made no bones about it that he thinks the best football player in America is Jeremiah Smith. And Jeremiah really doesn't have a chance of winning it right now because of the games that he missed in the statistical output. And it's a difficult situation to be in because I said at that time, Jeremiah is the best Heisman candidate. He's the most deserving Heisman candidate on Ohio State's roster, but the most likely winner is Julian Sayin. That situation has really not changed.
No, because Julian's continued to play, and the best football player in Ohio State is probably Caleb Downs, and he's not even allowed to be in the conversation because nobody's going to vote for a guy that has 2 interceptions and isn't returning kicks and doing all the other stuff. But
I think Arvell Reese is a pretty good football player too, personally.
What did you think of Ryan Day being? Maybe I've just not heard other coaches do it. Maybe I've not seen it nationally. The first one to kind of start this conversation that maybe the Heisman should wait until after the playoff.
I think a lot of people feel that way. I've been trying to get the college awards voting changed for years and no one will listen. Maybe Ryan Day has been reading.
Who's that guy we talked to at Big Ten Media Days?
Rich Clark.
Richie baby.
Hey, buddy.
Richie baby. If you're watching, we need to have a convo about changing these awards. And I know that has nothing to do with you, but you seem like a mover and a shaker and a guy who can get things done.
Yeah, listen up, buddy.
Miss you, Rich. That was a really fun conversation we had in Las Vegas.
Hopefully we'll see you again soon, maybe at the Rose Bowl, because the winner, we know that there's also that on the line. Silver football, maybe a Heisman Trophy, definitely a Rose Bowl appearance. So much fun to be had as we roll along. We're going to be back in the Wednesday for a Woody Wednesday with multiple shows. It's signing day. Why?
It's the start
of the signing period. I'm sorry. So that's going on. Ryan Day will have not one but 2 press conferences on Wednesday. We'll talk to some players after practice. So we'll have, I don't know what, a lot. But just stay tuned to 97.1 The Fan, YouTube there, 10 TV, YouTube, 10 TV Plus, Apple, Spotify, Roku if you want to get the audio only. Who knows? There's going to be a lot of content, but we'll start it with a Wednesday morning edition of The Beat. Is it going to be a stock watch? Is it going to be talking about signees?
Anything's possible.
Probably a little bit of both. He's Birm, I'm Austin. These have been Snap Judgments. We'll talk to you later.